Good morning, everyone. We are looking at Eastern Ukraine, and it is the 13th of January, Friday the 13th. I just wanted to discuss some things, a lot of the interesting rumors and what's going on coming out of Ukraine, specifically around Soledar and Bakhmut in Ukraine, which is in this region right here. So, um, before getting into that, I needed to say that honestly, any terrain taken here, is not necessarily strategically significant. This seems to be a weird hill that Russia is trying to die on to show that they're making some kind of progress. And although they might be making limited progress, it's a part of Ukraine's grander strategy here. So let's zoom in on what I'm talking about here. So you can see that they have Bakhmut here, and then Soledar's here. Soledar is where we are talking specifically on what's going on here. So I'll zoom further into these two. So word has it that the Russians have broken through, and the deep state map shows that they somewhat have in Soledar, showing that they have taken the city. Now, mind you, over the last few months, the front line was essentially right here. So this is what Russia took. That's in 3 months. They lost 3 to 4,000 soldiers, more specifically Wagner Group mercenaries, many of them those inmates that were pulled from prisons, just to take what is essentially Ukraine's 316th largest city, and they haven't entirely secured it at this point either. I mean, there's still pockets of fighting, but for all intents and purposes, the Russians have taken the city. It took them many months. It's ridiculous to take essentially 1 to 2 kilometers and give up 3 to 4,000 soldiers is an unsustainable policy. And what we're seeing, and like I said a bit ago, is a broader Ukrainian method of fighting this war. They know Russian tactics. They know Russians are just going to throw bodies at a problem. But in modern warfare, there is a limited number of bodies that can be effectively used before a better equipped, better trained military consolidates and overwhelms them. Russia has made very little gains in Bakhmut, which is more strategically strong for Ukraine mainly because of this route that goes right there, as well as it secures an anchor point to then try and take this route, which cuts off supplies for Ukraine in the broader area up here. As you see, this is really the only main artery right here that can supply everything over here. So Bakhmut opens up Krasnohora, a lot of other things, but there's no signs right now that Russia has taken anything in Bakhmut. But Wagner Group, the private military contractor, seems to have taken some ground in Soledar at the cost of 3 to 4,000 Russian lives. Now, what's interesting is with this Soledar capture, the Ukrainians are claiming that it has not been entirely been taken. Specifically, the map in Ukraine, what Ukraine is saying, kind of looks like this. Ukraine still owns this chunk right here, so it's almost like a 50-50 split. And I'm inclined to somewhat believe this. This map is based on somewhat of the intelligence of individual fighting. Just because there's fighting taking place in this region doesn't mean that there's actually Russians there. And if you go to Russian Telegram channels, there's interesting talk about what's actually going on here. Specifically, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is the leader of Wagner Group, prematurely announced that Soledar was captured, and it caused the Wagner Group mercenaries to desperately push to make that a reality for him. Wagner's really not fighting, or is really fighting without any regard for casualties right now. They're almost in like a berserker mode to try to take as much ground as they can. So yes, in the temporary, you will see them probably push Ukraine in a significant manner to new lines, new defensive lines, and take this where Ukraine would have to defend here and take the city. But again, this is a desperation move. Often, like a Hail Mary pass that can work, but you're still down like by 4 touchdowns essentially. So again, Soledar is just not a strategically significant city for them, but it's supposedly going to be a morale and psychological win for them. But I think the loss of 4,000 people is more of a morale breaker and psychological detractor than it is taking 1 to 2 kilometers of a very small town realistically. And this Russian VCHK channel on Telegram says that the soldiers are saying it's a nightmare there right now. There is a rush to announce a full takeover, and it's led to them to operate on the edge of what is possible. Though Wagner Group is literally being pushed from behind, everyone is being driven forward, and Prigozhin has personally announced that it's been a complete capture, so he will pay any price to take it. The losses for such a small section of the front are absolutely wild. This is a quote from soldiers on the front line, Wagner Group mercenaries. They went on to say that if the Wagner Group head is proven wrong, if Prigozhin is proven wrong, then the Russian Ministry of Defense will use it against him. And this comes after the change at the top, where the new general that is taking over the entire fight is not a fan of Wagner Group mercenaries. Gerasimov is they've been openly critical of each other, both Wagner Group and Gerasimov. So if he fails here, the supply of shells will probably be reduced, and the supplies, which Wagner Group still relies on Russia for supplies, will be reduced, as he is yet another failure on the front. Now, he went on to say that this Russian soldier went on to say that he would be surprised if these commanders who are reporting to Prigozhin are saying that they took Soledar just to appease him, and they took it in an unreasonably quick amount of time. They said that they took the entire city in a couple of hours. That's not possible given what the defensive posture in this region is. So again, there's a lot of confusion coming out of here. Ukraine is saying that there's still fights going on. There's videos that I unfortunately can't post where there's drones dropping munitions in the city of Soledar, geolocated on Russian troops, killing them, or Wagner troops really is what it is. And they said that there's nowhere to hide. Everything is flat ground out there. Russian troops are getting killed. They further went on to say that the weather is such that if you're wounded in these conditions, you almost have no chance of survival. Even if you stop the blood loss, you will freeze. And there are no evacuations taking place. They don't care about casualties. Everyone is dead if you get hit. That is, again, coming from a Russian troop on the front line. So when we hear about this Soledar scenario being taken, even if Russia happens to find a way to take the entirety of Soledar and hold it, which is still up in the air right now, it's a strategically insignificant piece of ground. Bakhmut still remains in Ukrainian hands in a significant measure, and that is the more strategically significant ground. The Soledar region is just specifically so that Wagner Group can declare a victory and continue to get paid, whereas Bakhmut is the more strategic area, which is what Ukraine is fighting. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, before I end here because I'm running out of time, about how Ukraine fights this fight. Even if they're giving ground in Soledar, that's on purpose. Ukraine has a lot of territory to give relative to the Russian troops on ground. So they're ceding territory slowly to attrit and kill Russian troops, destroy Russian equipment, hollowing them out, which will allow for a future major counterattack to drive a giant wedge and pull back, or take increased amounts of troops or increased amounts of ground in the future. That is the way Ukraine has been conducting this war. See Kherson, see Kharkiv. It's just let the Russians hollow themselves out by slowly moving forward as they lose thousands of soldiers, and then when they've been hollowed out significantly, push hard in a counteroffensive, drive them back, and retake all of that territory and more.